This is episode 4 of the Wilderness Locals podcast. On this episode, Foth and I chat with Chris Hartinger about his first elk, some elk hunting highlights, and his first stones sheep. This podcast is brought to you by Just Shooting Arrows, BC's premier archery shop.
We're just looking at your elk spot and be like, yeah, that we can get in there. We know where that is.
That's my new shooting range.
And the friendship is over, Tyler says.
Do you remember when I was first looking at that area? I went down that north side and I'm like, somebody has a 200-yard shooting range set up that's marked with a bench. What?
That was in the elk
Why?
spot?
Yeah, it's right there. Somebody's just sighting in their guns where I
That's
hunt
a
elk.
great spot. Well, it gets the elk used to all the gunshots.
Just throw a blind over top of you and shoot from a rest. Man, that'd be the tits.
Oh, buddy. It's like you could tell it was a road that was cut in that grew over and they just turned it into their range.
Well, whatever works, I guess.
There's shooting ranges all over the place around here.
Yeah, I mean, you go out there and you do find spent cartridges wherever you go.
Oh, yeah. Especially shotgun shells. People don't clean up those.
Yeah. And it's the easiest shell to pick up.
I know. It's this big red
It's
thing.
red. You'd be like,
It's hard to
I missed
lose.
that one. Where did I leave it? Oh, it's the bright red one on the ground.
That's
man.
awesome. That's funny. Yeah, I'm guilty of not practicing with my rifles at all, though.
Oh, yeah. I'm horrible, too.
I'm not. I definitely put in a lot of time shooting that thing, and because, well, the main reason this guy wanted to shoot this year, this year I put 3 boxes through that rifle of mine.
It paid off big time this year, Bucko.
Oh, yeah, big old paperweight. Got to lug that through the timber. That was a great time.
What's that about, eh?
Yeah.
Why are they so heavy?
I don't know. I think it's to prove that we're not the men that our fathers were or something. I don't know.
What about you, Hart? What's going on?
Oh, not much going on with me. Just getting ready to go back to work tomorrow.
It's not elk season yet.
No, it's definitely not elk season yet. It's 6 months away? 5 months? 7 months? I don't know.
Is it that close already?
No, it's 7 months, I think.
Yeah, it makes me very sad when
I was
think
waiting
about
for
it.
I know. But I haven't seen the elk timer on your Insta story.
I was just going to say that.
Okay, there's a story behind that. I I made a deal with one of me and my wife's friends, Bella, that if she's she's getting into backcountry hiking, I guess you'd call it. I don't really know. I don't really understand hiking. You don't kill anything. But anyways, she's getting into hiking, and I was like, I'll make you a deal, because apparently my timer really aggravates her. And I told her, I won't run the elk timer if you come on a bear hunt with me. And she's like, yeah, deal. No elk timer? I'm going on a bear hunt.
Sweet.
Really?
Yeah, so allegedly she's coming on a bear hunt.
So there's a bear timer then?
Yeah, there is.
I haven't seen it.
I was going to say.
I've only posted it once or twice in spite of her,
Yeah.
Because you were posting the elk one every day.
Oh, sometimes twice a day.
Sometimes twice a day. Because the time changes from the morning to the afternoon. And
I'm that excited for elk hunting.
yeah.
Well, that brings us to a pretty good segue here. You're a pretty accomplished elk hunter, Hart.
Oh, thank you.
Allegedly.
Allegedly.
I don't know. I've never seen anything you've killed.
That's true. I mean, I could just be finding these deadheads and then claiming them as my own.
Okay, so let's quickly do this so everybody knows who's who. Foth.
Hey, everybody.
There you go. You know him from episode 1, and we have our friend Hart on the line.
Yo.
There you go. So Hart, who are you? What do you do? And how did you get started hunting?
Oh, okay. My name's Chris Hartinger, or as Hart, my buddies like to call me. You want to know what I do professionally?
Sure, whatever.
Oh, I'm going to keep that out.
You can't say male exotic dancer.
Exotic dancer, escort,
He doesn't have the legs for it.
depends, it changes day by day. I got into
That's
hunting. Oh, well, I was born into hunting. So ever since I was a little kid, that's what my dad did. And so as far back as I can remember being a hunter, but it was mostly like deer hunting and grouse hunting, never really elk hunting. So I think I was like 11 when I shot my first buck. And I remember my dad used to take me up before school and we would go hunting, and October 1st would be any buck day. And usually that's the day I'd get my buck. And I'd show up like an hour late for school covered in blood with a story of how I shot this deer. It was always so sweet.
That's perfect.
Yeah. It was a lot of
That's
fun.
what we're looking for.
And that was kind of normal where I'm from. Like everybody was a hunter. So, I mean, I think nowadays if a kid showed up with some blood on him from a deer or something, everybody'd be freaking out. But
yeah,
it wasn't a big deal when I was a kid and where I lived. So, it was just deer hunting though. And I didn't really get into elk hunting until I was probably like 20 years old is when I would say I was like actually like seriously started hunting elk. Before that it was just deer. And,
cool.
Yeah.
So when did you take your first elk then? That's probably a decent story, eh?
Yeah, that was actually a crazy day because I was with my uncle and we actually got 2 elk in one day, which is pretty cool. That was my first elk. I would have been 21. Yeah, I was 21. And I shot one in the morning, and where we used to hunt is it used to be September 25th was the day the season opened, and everything changed a few years ago. And to me, that's always like been the best day in September to ever hunt an elk. And if I had only one day to hunt, if I only had like one day to hunt an elk, I would pick September 25th every time, because that is just the best day in my opinion.
Hopefully you don't flood the woods on September 25th by saying.
I'm sure everybody's got their day though in September, like any serious elk hunter, right?
I think any day that ends in Y in September is a good day to chase elk.
Any day in the season from the 1st to the 20th of October is a good day to chase an elk. But
yeah, like if you're like me and have no idea what you're doing and you're just bumping into them and then you're sprinting after cows, it's any time.
It is, yeah, for sure. So so we got 2 elk that day, and I shot my first bull, and that was all. It was my uncle who, he just took me out there, showed me where to sit and wait, and we seen the elk coming, and I counted to 6, and let one have it, and it was a crazy experience. I never thought I'd ever shoot an elk, and we spent half the day dealing with that elk, getting it out, and then we decided, you know what, let's go out again, and we'll go to another spot. And so I was like, okay. So, I was like, well, maybe I'll see a deer. I was like, I don't know. I was like, I'm pretty tired. I was like, we already shot one elk, and we sat in 2 different spots, and I could hear an elk bugling, and I was like, is that an elk or is that my uncle? I don't know. And then maybe 10, 15 minutes goes by, I hear boom, and I was like, okay, I think we just got another elk. And sure enough, I go to the truck where my uncle Jim parked, and I get into it, and I drive to the area where he was, and he comes out of the bush and tells me the story, and I was like, wow. So we ended up getting another one, and oh man, I think we didn't get home till like midnight or 1 a.m. But that was a crazy day, and 2 elk in one day. I've still never done anything close to that since then.
No,
yeah,
no way.
It was great. So that was the second year I was elk hunting.
That's like a pretty solid introduction to elk hunting, hey?
I know. And then I was kind of like, okay, so this is what it's like. But then, I had some hard seasons after that, and I kind of realized that, no, it doesn't always go that way. And, I've had some success over the years, but I've also, struggled a lot and had to learn a lot. And it's been hard, but it's been a great road. Like looking back now, some of the seasons I had where I didn't tag out, like, you just get so close, and either you can't get a count on the bull, or it's just not big enough. And
yeah, you don't want to sell yourself short though here either, because in terms of southern British Columbia elk hunters, there's not many more guys more accomplished than you. I mean, I can only think of one other guy that's kind of even close to what you're doing, and that's our buddy Travis, right?
Yeah, so, that's right. He's another.
Like I say, you can't sell yourself short.
No, I don't want to sell myself short, but I mean, it's been a lot of work, and it's definitely a lot of fun out there. And I've learned a lot of things over the years on how to hunt elk. And, then start listening to some of these podcasts that are out now. And it's like, man, where were these guys 10 years ago when I was like beating my head against a tree trying to figure out what I'm doing wrong?
Yeah, I was talking about that with Foth on our first episode, how you took me out on September 3rd in 2019, and you like gave me a run through on how to call in these silent bulls and this whole like master class. We spent the day working at it. And then like a month later, Remy Warren comes out with his episode on the same thing. I'm like, what is going on?
I know, I thought that was so funny. And yeah,
it was awesome.
Okay, well, I guess he knows what's up too, because that's a way I've been doing it for a while, and it seems to work. If there's elk in the area, you're likely going to call one in or bump one or something. And that was early in the season too, and I remember thinking like calling and doing all that stuff. And I had my guard down because I was still a little rusty. I hadn't hunted elk since the previous year, and just because I didn't hear anything calling or anything didn't mean elk weren't there. And I remember walking back to you, and there's two bulls in the trees like 30 yards away looking at us. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, that was my fault. But
yeah, I remember thinking as they were coming in, because like I watched them come in, and I was like, I don't think it's kosher if I shoot one of these bulls if it's legal. Like, I think I just have to look at it. This is not my spot. I'm here to learn, not kill something in my buddy's spot, right?
Meanwhile, you got an arrow knocked, ready to rock and roll. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, I had one on the string. If it tried to run me over, it was
like,
on.
There was a 6-point there, but I didn't shoot it. I'd have been like, why did you not shoot it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's fair.
That would have been totally cool. No, that was a fun morning, though.
Yeah, that was a really, any opportunity you have to go out with these guys, like you, Wasey, my buddy Ronnie, any guys like that, Travis, you get out and you watch guys that have refined that skill down to where they're actually getting in the game most times that they go out. You go watch them and you just pick so much up as a guy that's greener, you know what I mean?
Yeah, there's definitely a learning curve. Like I spent most of my time like hunting elk by myself. I learned a lot from my uncle when I was younger and how he hunted elk, and the way I hunt elk now is quite a bit different than the way he hunted elk, just because, well, he's getting old now and he can't hike as much. So I definitely spent a lot of time getting frustrated and not knowing what you're doing wrong. And it was pretty much just through a lot of experiences where you kind of figure out what worked and what didn't work. And then you take away from, if you're reading an article in the magazine, because I'm always doing that kind of thing, or seeing something on YouTube or whatever, and then trying it in the field, and then you can kind of see what you can get away with and what you can't get away with, and what worked and what didn't work. One thing I was doing is like on my way back, like out of a spot, I was jumping elk. I was like going through an area I'd already been through like a few hours ago, and I would jump an elk, and I'd be like, okay, like.
You're pulling them in behind you probably, right?
Yeah. Like, okay, just because I've been here already and now I'm back here again doesn't mean that there can't be an elk around. And that was actually 2019 when me and Foth got a bull to come in. We shot that bull at like, I think it was like noon, right at noon. Nice. And it was in a spot we had been at around 7 a.m. We were already there.
Yeah, we started through there before we cut across that ridge. Because when we spotted him from the other ridge, like we were a ways away. We weren't close at all.
Yeah, it was a couple kilometers away, at least, as the crow flies. But then when you boots to the ground, there was 2 valleys to go through, and it was probably more like 4K. It was brutal. I was wore out before we even took the shot.
Yeah, no, that was a cool day, man. Like that was one of those opportunities.
Yeah.
Like it was funny though, because I remember you saying like we just turned around and you're like, I bet you there's a bull back there, right where we came from. We're looking back at this beautiful ridge, and we're like, man, all these beautiful alpines, like whatever, this is great. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh. I'm like, what's up? And you're like, I think I see a royal. Get out the glasses. Sure enough. Then he just goes through. He goes, what do you think we should do? I'm like, I don't know. What do you want to do? This is your hunt. I'm just the second guy.
I think we should kill this elk.
And well, that's what it came down to. We're both kind of looking at each other, and I'm like, yeah, man. I'm like, well, what do you think? I'm like, I'm pretty tired, but he's just like, let's go. And I'm like, I'm in. Let's go. Grab the packs. And
I think it was like from the time you were like, what do you think we should do? There was probably maybe 3 or 4 seconds of silence, and I was like, we're going.
Yeah. The packs were on, and the sweat was pouring down us as we're literally running down a mountain to run up a mountain.
And it's midday, early September. It's hot out, and like the whole time we were chasing some other elk, and I was like, we're just gonna make a beeline to get to this other ridge, and I totally thought we were gonna jump this other herd of elk in the midst of this chaos, but we ended up not jumping anything, but ended up finding a whole bunch of rubs in another area that we cut through, and I was like, okay, like they've been spending a lot of time in here. All right. And mental note. Yeah. Mental note.
Oh yeah, totally.
Like, I'm always thinking about next season. So, the next year I put a camera in there and I started getting some really good bull picks. So,
nice.
Yeah. We made our way, got to this ridge, and then we kind of got in the same area as this elk. And there's a really good main trail in there. And I was pretty confident that was the trail he was going on. So got on this old deactivated road, and because it was midday, wind was kind of starting to come uphill a bit. And I just wanted to get to this one spot, and I was like, I'm going to call from here, and we're going to figure out if he's below us or above us, and then decide what we're going to do. And let out a couple chirps, and then all I heard was branches breaking below us, and I was like, okay, nice. That's probably him, and he's fairly close. And then Foth moved back a little bit. I moved down just because the way the wind was going. I wanted to keep it so that if he was going to try to wind me, I would see him before he even got my wind, and I was going to hammer him. But he ended up just walking right up the trail. And within like 30 seconds of us calling again, we just could see blonde and tines in the trees. And I think it was like a 14-yard shot. And
that's awesome.
Yeah, it happened so fast though. And it was a quartering toward shot, and I shot him with a 300 short. And I remember like after I shot, he just disappeared, and just heard like crash, 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 and then silence.
Which is my worst nightmare.
Yeah.
Like it is.
And I was just like, because most of the elk I shoot my 340 Weatherby, and they just drop right in their tracks. So whenever one runs, I get really nervous. And I remember like instantly second guessing my shot and telling Foth, like, I think I messed this up. And I'm like, let's just give it a few minutes. And, then we went to where he was standing, and you could see the tracks where he kicked up and turned, and he ran straight the way he came. And I was kind of glassing down there, couldn't see him. So we walked down the trail a little bit, and you can smell him. And I'm like, okay, well, that's good. But no blood. Yeah. And I told Chris, I was like, well, just go to the edge of to this tree line, which is about 60 yards from where I shot him. And I was like, if we don't find a bull, we're waiting at least an hour before we go anywhere, because I don't want to push this thing if it isn't to get shot.
That's some good advice that I think you had given somebody else before.
Yeah. That guy learned, though. He definitely learned his lesson, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That was a cool day, man, because I remember to back up, when you were saying that, when you got to see the blonde, I was actually watching his royals come out of the trees.
Yeah, that's right, because you had a bit of a different angle.
I had a different angle because I was cow tripping behind you, and all I could see was his royals come out. And when he walked out, I was stunned, because I'd actually never seen an elk walking through the timber like that, and just the awe of it was unreal. And
it was close.
Then I literally got to watch him put his face down, and his hump went way up, and I'm like, oh, he is smoked.
Yeah, you had a different angle than I did. I was in the trees.
When I heard him crash, you were like, oh no, and I'm like, oh man, he is toast. Like I could hear just the whole body piling up. I'm like, he's done. There's no way he's gone any farther than that.
My confidence level of knowing when an animal has hit the dirt is at ground level right now. After I shoot them, I never think they're gonna die. I'm like, okay, well, I guess I'll spend the next 4 months tracking this, whatever. Okay.
They're all bulletproof, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
And that's rough. If you've hunted long enough, a lot of guys have been in that position and learned those hard lessons, and I'm one of them. And it sucks, but it's definitely a part of hunting. And I
feel like I got my lumps out of the way in the last
you should be good now for the rest of your career. You won't,
At least, right? Yeah.
At least, yeah.
What year was it that you spent all night tracking that one elk with your dad that got bumped? Because that was a crazy time for you.
Yeah, that was 2014. Yeah, so I have a lot of stories of tracking animals and finding them and then not finding some, and that's just the way it goes. So I've learned those lessons myself, but a long time ago when I was just kind of getting into it. And in 2014, my old man shot a really big bull, and he shot with a 270 with 130 grain bullet, which I wouldn't really recommend hunting elk with.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
It was a frontal shot at like 20 yards, and it dropped, and it got back up, and he shot again, and I don't know if he hit it or not. And then it went straight uphill. And
is this story about me or your dad?
yours went down the mountain, Ty, and then changed zip codes.
So he calls me, like I wasn't here for this, and he calls me, and he's just like, blah, 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 elk, I shot it, ran, and I'm just like, hold on, like, where are you? Okay, I will be there. And this is another, when you're gonna go help track an elk for somebody, bring water. Because we did not bring water, and I've never been so thirsty my entire life. Because it was a long night.
Let's not focus on elk that get shot and run until the following year.
That one, we found that one though. We found it maybe 300 yards from where he shot it, and
that's great. Yeah. That's what you want to hear.
So it was good, and then we packed meat out until 5 a.m. It was, and then my alarm for getting up to go to work was going off as we're packing this elk out.
Nice. So you'd probably say elk hunting is sort of your jam, your passion, your go-to with hunting.
100%. To me, it's all I can really think about is elk hunting, and the entire season is for me is elk hunting. I enjoy deer hunting and whitetail and all that, but elk hunting is what I really enjoy the most. And elk meat to me is the best meat there is. So
I feel like after you take out, you often live vicariously through me.
Absolutely. Because I always like to know what you're doing and what's going on with you, and if you're getting into the elk or not. So
yeah. Well, lately I have been. So
yeah, cool. Your last 2 seasons have been like pretty steady. Like you're having good encounters.
Yeah, it's good.
You don't sound so thrilled.
If anybody could see the cameras right now, his face is saying something totally different.
Yeah. No, elk are great fun, but they'll
break your heart.
They will break your heart, and they'll make you earn it. I think is the best.
They're not an easy animal to kill, and especially in like the area where we hunt elk, it is not easy to kill an elk here.
No, for sure. I know a couple like hardcore gnarly northern BC studs that have been at it in that area for like close to a decade, and they're just getting into the elk now. Like it's southern BC is just tough.
Yeah, man. It is tough, and especially like where we hunt, we just don't have like the elk density that other units would have, but the quality is there. And I know, like, for me personally, like, I don't know any different. I've only ever hunted elk in one area, so to me, it's just, that's always the way it's been. But it's always been tough. It's never been easy. And like every season, I'm always like, man, I don't know if it's going to happen, but you always just work your butt off and do everything you can to make it happen. And luck sometimes on your side, and it gets done. So I know I'm always very thankful if I ever get one. And it never comes easy, and I never think it was easy,
Yeah. Well, I don't know anybody that works harder towards their goals than you, I think, in terms of training and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's all fun too, though. Like that side of things and getting like physically prepared, like for me, it's just the habit now. It's, I'm always just into that sort of thing, and I enjoy that. No, I would say as much as I enjoy elk hunting, but that aspect of it is a lot of fun for me too.
I enjoy razzing the boys as much as elk hunting, I'd say.
That's another good aspect of it too.
That like, I think it was the first 100K or the 200K challenge that we did, when I just like immediately started hitting it as hard as I could and then petered out quickly.
I'm glad you brought that up.
I think we all petered out pretty quickly. Yeah. We like looked at Hart's like scale. Yeah, but that's because he was scaling to success, and we're like, we're not going to catch this guy. Like, what's the point?
Dude, it wasn't a competition though. It was a challenge.
No. If anybody had seen the text going out of that, you would have seen it's a competition for sure. And if you're not, you're not going to lose gracefully, at least just lose, right? Just back up.
And it wasn't anything. And I did not run 200K in the first week. You said that in the first podcast.
Wasn't it like 2 weeks?
It was a 1 month challenge. Was it?
It was 1 month.
Yeah, but he waxed it in a week or a week and a half.
I did that part in like a week and a half. Yeah. I did. It was.
Go back.
I'd have to look. I did like.
Go back and look at your August, dude.
No, it was July.
It was gnarly.
I think it was like
Was it July?
Yeah, it was like 345K for July, which was a pretty good month. But all I
and the first week was like the challenge done.
All I did was run though, but it was great because I went into my sheep hunt like just ready to go, put my pack on and just running up the mountain chasing sheep. So that was a lot of fun.
So what sparked that whole change from chasing elk to chasing sheep? Like what was that like?
That was Travis, my buddy. When you guys know Travis, he's been trying to get me to sheep hunt for years, and I was just like, I don't know, man. Like they're pretty big hunts. You need a lot of gear, and they're really intimidating. And I was just like, I don't know. Like I enjoy elk hunting. Like I'm an elk hunter. I don't know if I'm a sheep hunter. Like that's a whole different animal. And
seems a little sheepish.
It seems a little sheepish, But then it was, I'm gonna say, the start of 2019. He's like, how about we go for like an archery sheep hunt? And then the gears started turning, and I was like, like that sounds fun. Like, so we start talking, going over areas and what we're gonna do. And I was like, we're gonna go for 7 days. And I was like, man, that's a long time to go hunting. Like, I'm gonna have to get some better gear because I'm used to just hunting from my house. So, but I was like, okay, like no, like. Maybe I'll do this once. We'll try it. We'll see how it goes. And I think anybody that's ever sheep hunted will tell you like you don't just do it once.
That's what Ronnie says too. Ronnie's always like, Ty, don't do it. Don't do it, buddy.
Yeah.
Because I have this obnoxious goal of knocking off all 9 big game species in BC before I move on to anything else really. And I've already hunted in Alberta, so that maybe it's not going to happen. but that's like a little goal that I have. And Ronnie keeps saying to me, he's like, Ty, buddy, don't do it. He's like, once you get that sheep bug, it's game over. Everything else sucks after that.
Yeah, but one thing that's really nice about sheep is it opens August 1st, which is way before elk season opens here for us. So that's one thing I really like is it doesn't affect my elk season.
Yeah, you could get back home, spend time with the family, and then get
exactly.
into the elk woods.
But like the first time I went sheep hunting, I was like, it's the middle of summer and we're hunting. Like I was just felt really weird to me, but of course where we're hunting, it didn't feel like summer because it can be raining or snowing or whatever. Right.
So how'd the first sheep hunt go?
It went great. Like I was, I did a lot of training for it because I was like, I want to be in good shape because we're going to be hiking and we're not flying in. We're essentially parking on the side of the highway and we're hiking to sheep country, and sheep live at the top of the mountain, so it was going to be a big challenge. And figure out how much weight to bring in and how much water and food and all that to just go up the mountain with, and so it was a lot of training went in for it because I really wanted to be prepared, and I didn't want to slow Travis down because I pretty much just went up there to be like his sidekick, and I was like, we'll go up here and hopefully we'll get Travis a sheep because I was like, this is his hunt and I've never done it before and I'll try it out.
And that worked out really well.
That worked out really well.
Got to pack stuff out for Chris. That was it.
Yeah,
awesome.
It did not go as planned because I was like, I did not expect to kill a sheep, but we did like he who spots it stalks it, right? In which Travis is way better at spotting sheep than I am because he's like, oh yeah, there's some, and I'm like, what? Like I was looking at those are rocks. Like, oh no, those are sheep. Oh, okay, But first opening morning, Travis spotted the first ram, and it was a doer ram, like over 10 years old probably. Is what we are guessing. Yeah.
Like, let's
and he's
go.
like, we got to go. And it was like, everything's far in sheep country. Nothing is close. Everything is like so far. And it looks like you can get there really quickly, but man, it takes time just because you can see so far. Right.
Yeah.
So it took us probably like an hour and a half to get over in position, and it's foggy, but we're using the fog to our advantage because this thing was just bedded down. Yeah. It's bedded down on top of the mountain looking at us. Fog rolls in. We're moving out. Trying to get a better look at this sheep, and we got within a few hundred yards, and then Travis was like, "Oh yeah," I was like, "We're going after this thing's a shooter man for sure." So I was like, "Let's do it." Like, I'll stay with the spotter, and he's gonna make a big move around and try to get in a position on this sheep. And that whole stalk lasted about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, and it started out with Travis and a wolverine just about running into each other. I seen Travis went up one side of a mountain. The wolverine was coming up the other side. And I was like, man, these guys are going to meet in the middle. This is not going to be good. And I can't yell at him. He's like 2 kilometers away. And then this sheep it gets up, starts feeding. And Travis is using the fog to his advantage. And he gets close, like he got inside of 100 yards, and then I don't know what happened. Something went wrong. Sheep got spooked, and then it ended up running my way. So I got my bow arrow knocked, and I go running, and I got within maybe 150 yards of this thing, which was way out of bow range, and then it was gone. And then he's like, well, maybe we'll see that one again later. I was like, yeah, I don't know. So we just keep hunting, right? It's opening day of sheep season, and there's other guys around, and it's whatever. There's competition.
Yeah.
And we start glassing another basin, and boom, we see more sheep. And we're glassing, and we've seen like 7 rounds together or something like that. And getting closer, and we can see one's legal. And I make a stalk on it and got within bow range, but wasn't confident if it was the legal one or not because it got mixed up in some other sheep. And by the time I figured out that it was legal, it was like 48 yards quartering away by another sheep about to go over a cliff. So there's no way I was going to do that.
Right off the horn.
Yeah, right off the horn. So it was cool though, because I was like, man, we're getting in on these sheep, and there's stalks to be had, and this is a lot of fun.
Already a success.
Yeah, like we've both.
Yeah, and that's all in
this
day
is
one.
On day one, and then we end up getting into some more sheep, and Travis he's pretty picky when it comes to hunting, and I was like, well, like I've never shot a sheep. If it's a full curl, 8 years old, whatever, like I won't be picky. And Travis spots another ram, and he's like, well, it's 8. He says it's not full curl, but it's legal age. And I was like, well, do you want it? He's like, no. Like, I was like, okay, like I'll go after it. And so I made a stalk on it, got to 55 yards, and let one rip, and I missed. And man, I never that really sucked.
Isn't that heartbreaking when you get to a range that you shoot all the time?
Yeah, and I still hear about that with Travis. If we ever shoot and it's something's at 55 yards, like practicing, he's like, he always brings up that sheep, and it hurt.
It's one of those things too that like just the variables of the hunt and being winded and sweaty and your nerves, and you got sheep fever or buck fever or whatever.
Yeah.
And you're like, 55-yard shot. Like you thump those in your backyard.
Yeah. And I felt
you
great.
Get on the mountain, it's all different.
I dialed my sight in, I put the pin on him, and I let the arrow go, and I swear I heard it hit him, but it actually was hitting a rock. Because the arrow and broadhead were destroyed. So that was heartbreaking. And those sheep, they go into this basin, and they're a long ways away now. And we go around and we're watching them, and Travis is like, well, I'm going to go see if I can find that other sheep I was chasing. And I'm like, you know what, man? Like, I really want another crack at this round. Like, I felt like, I can't let this go. I got to chase this thing some more. And so we ended up splitting up, which I don't know if that's the greatest idea to do in sheep country. But I dropped my pack, and I went one way, Travis went another way, and it was game on. I was chasing.
You didn't even have an inReach, did you?
I didn't. I had a bow and a Bushnell rangefinder.
That's exactly what you need up there.
Exactly. And that's why I was like, man, maybe this isn't a good idea, but I was like, I really want that sheep. And so it probably took me another 3 hours, and I got myself into bow range again. And it was a lot of like crawling on my hands and knees. I lost my rangefinder in the midst of all this, crawled around for like an extra 10 minutes, and I found it. I can't believe it. Right. I couldn't I go to range this sheep, and I'm like, my rangefinder's gone. And I'm like, I've been belly crawling for the last 150 yards. Oh man, this sucks. I was like ready.
Trying to pick up sticks on the ground, like that might be about.
And I was like,
range.
I've already missed this sheep once. I cannot miss it again. I need that rangefinder. I'm not the greatest at judging distance here.
In the last episode when Wasey was talking about, I'm about to see a pass through on a 190-inch deer. So I go to grab my rangefinder out of my rangefinder pouch, and it's just an empty pouch. And there's like deer like right here, like cruising across in front of us. I'm like, looks like 60. Guess I'll send it.
How far was it?
It was 60. Nice. I had the range
Good
dialed.
Guess.
Yeah, Wasey had ranged me and the deer and confirmed it for me after. But I turn around, and Chad's got my rangefinder in his hand, like, dude, what the... Okay.
Did you need this? No. Yeah, I did need that.
Yeah, so I know how you feel.
Yeah.
So you got a crack at it after that.
Yeah, and it ended up being it's what's funny is actually I got in range and I didn't even end up ranging him. I guessed the range and I didn't even use the rangefinder because things happened quickly and they kind of went into this little bluffy area and I got above them and 3 of them were feeding. I had no clue I was there.
Yeah.
And then the one I was after, like there was 4 rams there. The one I was after was the biggest out of all of them and he was super dark and the rest of them were super light colored. So I was like, okay, like he's the dark one. If he gets mixed up with these other sheep, he looks way different than all the other ones. So I won't mess up like I did the first one, but you really can't be too careful with sheep. So I get above him and I see him walk out and I just looked at him. I was like, I guessed it was like 43 yards, but it was downhill. So I ended up putting my 40 on him and I was at full draw and he actually looked up at me. But by that time I was at full draw and I let one rip and smoked him right in the front shoulder.
Nice.
And like that arrow just went dong and stuck in him. And I just remember thinking like, man, that looks like it hurt. And he rolled over, like down he went, rolled over behind a rock. And I'm just like, the other sheep started running and then they stopped. They're looking at me like, they're like, what was just, it was so crazy. They're looking at me like, what's going on? And then I can't see the sheep anymore. And I see part of my arrow on this ledge. And I'm like, okay, where'd he go? And then all of a sudden he rolls out behind this other rock and he's kind of kicking, but his head's down. And I'm like, okay, yeah, no, like he's done. And this is all within 10 seconds. Like he was down quick.
Nice.
And, but he's like inching towards this cliff.
And he's doing the death kick, which is not good.
Yeah. No. And like their horns are so big and heavy. His head went over the edge. And as soon as his head went over, the rest of them followed and he just crashed. And the sound he was making crashing from the horns, like I thought he was going to be destroyed. And he ends up sliding and getting stuck in this avalanche chute. And then I'm just like looking at it like, there's no way I can get to him. Like, how am I going to get down there? Like, this is crazy. And I'm like, I have no idea where Travis is now. He's got no idea where I am.
You still have your Bushnell rangefinder.
I still have my Bushnell rangefinder.
Travis is back in camp, hanging out.
You know what's? Yeah, it's pretty funny. So I'm like, okay, I see where the sheep is. It's now it's late. Like it's probably 9 o'clock, maybe pushing 10 o'clock, and I think it's dark at 11 there. And I'm like, I got to get back to camp. I was probably 6K from camp, and I'm tired. I have my pack is like 4 kilometers back from where me and Travis split up. So I was like, I got to go get my pack, and I got to go find camp. And we set up camp the night before, so I was like, I'm still not too sure where camp is. It's somewhere over here. So end up hiking back to camp. And the whole time we were going up there and I brought this fold out chair, kind of like the one you have, Tyler, when you go elk hunting. And he's like, he's harping on me. He's like, man, don't bring that. Like, it's too heavy. You don't want to bring that.
Is he all reclined in your chair when you get back?
So I get back to camp. Not only is he's sitting in my chair, he's wearing my camp shoes because he forgot his. And he's like, where were you? And I was like, man, I shot a sheep. And he's like, why aren't you stoked? And I was like, it fell off a cliff. And he's like, no. And I'm like, yeah, man, I don't even know if we can get it. Like, I couldn't get down to him. We'll try in the morning and we'll see if we can get him out. But I was pretty upset just because of the way things went down. And I wasn't sure if we're going to get him. And I was so sore. It took me probably 2 hours to fall asleep. And then I didn't sleep very well that night just because of everything. And
adrenaline.
Adrenaline and like what had happened. And then it's like, I arrowed a stone sheep, which is unreal. I never thought in the world I never thought I'd be a sheep hunter. I never thought I'd kill a sheep. And then my first sheep's with a bow and arrow.
Awesome.
Yeah, and a hunt that you were just going along.
I was just tagging along to help Travis get his first stone, and I ended up being the one getting one. And so the next day, we get our stuff ready and we go back to where I got this sheep. And it took probably an hour to find it because I was getting mixed up on whereabouts I was. And I didn't drop a pin with my Bushnell rangefinder, Yeah, I guess that feature.
You just left it on the ground somewhere.
Yeah. And I finally see it and Travis is like, where is it? I'm like, it's right down there. And he's like, oh man. And I'm like, yeah, like this is brutal. So he's like, well, I'll stay up here and watch you go down there. So I'm like, okay. So
I feel like Travis is the kind of guy that could convince you to get down there though,
Oh yeah, he did. He was like, help me spot me a line, and he's watching me through the spotter. And it took me probably 20 minutes, but I got down there. And it was actually sketchier coming up because I had a sheep on my back. But I get down there and I'm in this avalanche chute and it's all shaly and it's nasty. And it's probably like a 30-foot chute, and then there's another cliff. And, you know, every step you take, you're sliding. And I get to the sheep, and every time I grab this sheep, he's sliding down and down. So I had to freaking cape, debone this thing in this avalanche chute all in my lap. And it was brutal, man. Like the entire time I'm sliding down this avalanche chute.
At least there's no grizzlies there, so when you're covered in blood in camp, it's like not a big deal.
Oh, it was G-Bear country.
I know. I'm kidding.
We camped right beside where one dug out a friggin' groundhog.
That's great.
Yeah, so I got it. It took me probably like the better part of an hour, covered in blood, dealing with this sheep because I did the entire thing in my lap, and put all the meat on the side, cape, horns on the side, and then pretty much stepped to the side, and this skeleton fell down the rest of the cliff. It was crazy. That's awesome. And then started the pack out, and man, it was brutal. And Travis is just up there at the spotter watching me. Yeah, it was tough.
Nice.
And then, back to the camp, it was pretty much the full day dealing with that. And then the next day, that night actually we're sleeping, and a wolverine came into camp, packed my cape off. And it was like right beside my head, playing with the horns to the sheep. I was sleeping. Travis was telling me all this. He's like, you were sound asleep, and there was something whacking the horns beside your head. And I was like,
you're
what?
Just exhausted.
And then in the morning we get out, and the cape's gone. And I'm like, oh, no way. And it was 50 yards from camp, and there was a couple more extra holes in it from when there was.
Or he's chewing on it.
Because there was already an arrow hole in it. There was probably 4 or 5 knife marks from me butchering it in this avalanche chute. And then it was chewed on by a wolverine. So I was like, man.
Dude, that's bonus style points.
Oh, plus its like face was split open from the falling off the cliff. So like this thing had some sweet character. And I had a lot of explaining to do to the taxidermist when I brought it there. Because he gave me
because he was like, what'd you cut this open with a butter knife? Like, what are you doing?
I showed it to him. I was like, okay, man. I was like, I caped this thing out in an avalanche chute. And then it fell off the cliff, caped out in this avalanche chute. It's got an arrow hole through it. And then he's like, you shot this thing with a bow? And I was like, yeah. He's like, whoa. Like, he was pretty, I was like, yeah, yeah. What?
You're like, I'm the man. It's not a huge deal.
Just a little pumped up.
And then I was like, the chin split open. And then a wolverine got it. And he's like, he's like, yeah, I can fix this. I was like, okay, thanks, man.
I was going to say, it turned out pretty good. I've seen it.
He did a great job. And I was super pumped. And it was done quick. Like, I took it to him in August, and I had that thing back into January.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I couldn't complain. And it ended up being a 9-year-old stone sheep, and I couldn't have been more pumped. And from then on, like, I got the sheep bug.
Yeah, right. So now you're planning trips.
Yeah, now like I've already got my spring draws in. Deadline's on Friday, and we'll see what happens when those come out, and then when I know the results of those, whether you get a tag or not, start planning for sheep season for this year.
Yeah, and so this past season you did a doll hunt with Travis, right?
Yeah, so he ended up drawing a tag, and I didn't draw the tag, but he's my sheep buddy, and to go out somewhere with and not have a tag in your pocket, it's pretty rough. That's tough, but we came up with a deal that if I go with him, he'll come with me if I ever get the tag, and plus, like, he's the guy who got me into sheep hunting. And I was like, of course I'll come with you. Like, this will be a great experience for both of us. And I'm going to learn a ton. And if I ever draw this tag, I'm going to have a lot more experience going into this area too. And this is an area that he went to, I think in 2015 with his dad who had the tag, and they never ended up getting the sheep, but they were into quite a few rams. And that was just a wild,
that's awesome.
Crazy country. Some of the most beautiful country I've ever seen, but busy. Like that was another hike and hunt. And I think I would fly into that area next time just because I almost died in a river.
Let's not give too much of that one away, because I'm going to try to get Travis on here. Try to convince him. He told me 10K and he'll come on.
Okay.
That's fair, right?
Yeah. Set the bar pretty low.
I mean, he's got to fuel that plane that he.
That's right. But it would be great to have him on here and tell that story, because man, that was just a great hunt where I learned a lot about sheep hunting, and it was so much fun. And I know both sheep hunts I've done, I've almost died twice. So
I think
that's just sheep hunting though.
Do you tell your wife that every time, or you keep that to yourself?
Hopefully she doesn't listen to this podcast.
Yeah.
I doubt she will. Nobody does. I think it's just the three of us that listen to it.
Oh, I've got a bunch of fake accounts that I've been subscribing with, so there's those.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Pumping your tires, buddy.
That's great.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, I mean, we could talk about your plans for 2021, but we kind of know. You're waiting for draws.
Waiting for draws, and then it's going to be elk hunting. You know, because that's just what I like to do the most, right? And by the time elk season rolls around, I'm going to have an empty freezer, so I can't have that, you know. But like my planning for 2021 started in 2020, you know, which that's one thing. Whenever I'm hunting, I'm always looking for new areas and always on maps and exploring, and even exploring during hunting season and trying new things, just because I don't like to hunt the same area over and over.
Yeah.
You know,
I did notice that with you. It's like we would check in, since I'm in there all the time, and we would check in and I would see where you're at, see if you needed help or anything, and you would always be somewhere different. Like every week.
Like, you know, I just kind of have like, you know, probably 3 or 4 spots, and I just kind of hit them and go around, just so I'm not in the same area all the time, you know, just putting too much pressure, too much scent, or you know, whatever, right? And I'm always looking for new areas, though, just because each year is a little bit different, and the elk aren't always in the same spots. So it's good to have a few spots in your back pocket, and, you know, and always be exploring. But even so, like, I'll be hunting and I'll be like, man, like this would be a good spot for next year. But I'll be like, well, you're hunting it now, so it can be a good spot for this year too.
Yeah, no kidding.
You know? In my little spot there, season didn't go quite as planned, and later in the season I was doing some exploring, and I wasn't more than a few kilometers away from where I kind of normally start hiking, and I'm like, oh wow, there's a wallow here I never knew about. Oh wow, look at all these rubs. Oh wow, look at all these beds. It's like there's so much country where we live, and it's like unless you're going through it, you'll never find.
That's exactly
stuff,
right. And even a spot like been hunting for since 2009, and I kind of got the same ways I like to hike through there and stuff. And finally, you know, I did a little bit more exploring in one spot that I've kind of always meant to go into, but I never really have. And there's beds and rubs. And what actually got me the most excited was the amount of old rubs, because there was like 4 fresh rubs, but there was rubs from years and years, like old rubs. So I was like, okay, like they've been coming here for a long time. Like I always look for a new sign, but I always also look for old sign and old rubs, because that kind of gives you an idea where they were in the rut, right?
Totally. Those like even a couple of year old rubs, like you were saying. So I think it's probably time for old Foth there to be up to bat on the southern BC elk dive in head first and develop an area scenario. Yeah,
man. We were talking about it last year when actually Hart and I were out spring bear hunting. We had a bit of an encounter, and yeah. So I think we're gonna probably do a little scouting in that area. But I'm pretty lucky. Like I enjoy elk hunting. I enjoy the challenge of elk hunting, but I also enjoy being the second guy on the elk hunts. So, you know, much like everybody, like it's nice to be that other guy. I don't know if I'm.
Yeah, it's nice to help. It's nice to help for sure.
But it's definitely something I want to spend more time doing. I want to start getting more cams out and start putting salt down and really seeing these areas that are in a zone that I hunt, which isn't too far from these zones that you boys hunt. So we'll see this year. Like I said to you in the first podcast, this year I'm pretty driven. So
yeah, it'd be good. I'm excited to see what happens there. And I mean, I think I said it in the first podcast. I think with Hart's help, I think you'll put it together for sure.
Yeah, no, totally. And you know, like all my other hunting stuff, he's been the one that sets me up. Usually, he gives me some direction. So I'm sure I can rely on him to definitely help me out.
I got your back.
Because, I think I've done enough, pulled enough favors for him where he's called me. Well, I've packed enough of his elk out.
Dropped everything and come help me pack an elk out.
Yeah. So this year I got the call from Hart, and he was saying like, hey man, like I think I got an elk. He's sending me text, right? And he's like, I think I got an elk on the go. And I'm like, okay, well, and this is pretty early. This is probably about 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, it was like 10 or 11.
And I was just,
I think it was.
I was just
around 11.
Yeah, so
I was right downtown Vancouver when you called.
So was I.
I was working.
Yeah, so was I.
I was in Cole Harbour working on a penthouse, And Hart dials me up and he's like, "Hey, are you hunting right now?" And I'm like, "No, man, I'm in Vancouver working," which is like weird for me in September, right? And he's like, "Can you get up here?" I'm like, "I'll get out of here as fast as I can." And by the time I had like got my stuff together and like threw boots and some water in the truck, you guys already had that thing packed out.
Yeah, well, he called me at about 11, and I walked off site, and I just drove back to the office. I went into the shop. I told my boss, I said, "Hey, I gotta go." And he's like, "Why?" I'm like, "My buddy's gonna call me in about 5 minutes. He's gonna tell me he's got an elk down." And he's like, "No." He's like, like, I need the guys on site to keep going. I'm like, "Trust me." Sure enough, my phone rings when I'm in the office with him, and I'm like, "No, I gotta go." And he's like, "Oh, okay." I'm like, "Don't worry, I'll be back tomorrow." So yeah, we drove up from the coast, met up with Hart, and that was a long day for me. And what time? We didn't get out of the bush until what, 12:30?
Yeah, and it was raining. And man, it's just
it was ugly.
Yeah,
I remember my pack wasn't. I just got my new pack and I hadn't set it up yet, and it was riding so low on my hips. I was praying. I'm like, "Tyler, please show up." I'm in agony. I'm like, why did I do this? Why did I tell him I could do this with him? But lo and behold, we got it out, and then we actually bumped into Ty as he was coming in, and I remember going back to your place, laying on the bed, passing out, and my alarm went off 2 hours later, and I got up and I drove back to the coast to go back to work.
I can't believe you did that.
Rolled it,
and then Tyler just got up to go hunting.
Tyler at least got to go hunting on him, and I was all at work, and everyone was like, "You look like death," and I'm like, "I'll talk to you later." My buddy's out there enjoying the time of his life, walking through the elk woods. He's like, "Ha, sucker," and I'm sweating away at work.
And I was just sleeping in my bed.
I also think you have a little bit of an unfair advantage, Hart, living that close to elk country.
I do, for sure. I'm definitely lucky that way.
Dude, that morning I woke up in your kid's playroom, stepped on like a piece of Lego, and I was out the door. Like 10 minutes later, I was rocking.
So that's one nice thing is, I couldn't imagine having to drive like 2-3 hours every morning to go hunting elk. That would just be crazy.
Yeah,
for a normal person, it's super tough. Like if you're not going to book the time off, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah. Well,
like,
I'm a normal person. How dare you?
No, you're not. The more people get to know you on this thing, man, the more they're gonna be like, "Yeah, he's crazy."
Yeah, this guy's something else.
That's a weird dude, man.
No, he's not a weird dude. He's just a crazy dude, and he'll.
Yeah.
It's sweet though. Like you get to do what the life that most guys would kill for, and same with Hart. And if I could spend as much time in the elk woods as you two do, that would be gravy. But,
well, I know for me, like
September
is just a different time of year in my house, and the family understands that I like to go out there and hunt, but at the end of the day I'm trying to fill the freezer, and the wife knows if I can get the time in, I can usually come back with an elk one of those times I go hunting, and it's nice.
Totally a fair trade for value.
Yeah, because like if I was going out there every day,
get ridiculed.
Getting skunked, she might look at me like, "Well, what are you doing out there?"
You just tell her you're hunting with Foth. That's fine.
She's like, all these days off work could probably add up to a side of beef, I think.
Probably. Yeah. If anybody tells you they hunt to save money, they're
full of it.
Because that's not.
I know.
Yeah.
I remember somebody asked me how much like a deer tag was, and like, "Oh, that's the cheapest meat you'll ever get."
No.
No.
Yeah.
No. No. I'm wearing a $1,200 backpack, lady.
That's right.
Stop.
And a $2,000 rifle or bow. Yeah. To shoot like a 2-point mule deer, right?
Yeah, to shoot a dink.
Yeah,
to get 40 pounds.
To get your 40 pounds of meat. Yeah.
We're hunting blacktail.
Yeah, blacktail.
Right? You're not getting much. There's not much yield there.
No, that's kind of like whitetail around here. Like they're not very big either. Like you get 60 pounds, that's pretty good. Mule deer though would be 200.
Yeah, that whitetail I shot, I got a lot of meat off him. I couldn't believe it.
Did
you? Yeah. Yeah. He was like, he was close in size, like body wise, to that mule deer that I took this past year.
Jeez, that's actually pretty good.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, after elk season's done, what's your next big focus?
Focusing on the next elk season.
Other than that, but
that's
like,
totally
are you looking
fair.
to close mule deer tags? Like I know Natalie's had big success with the mule deer tags the last couple of years.
Yeah, I know. She shot a bigger buck than I have. you know. But I'm not much of a deer hunter, so yeah. After elk season, it's always muley hunting. It's always a lot of fun chasing those things around, and you know. And then after those, it's whitetail, you know. So there's always something to hunt. Like just from September 1st to December, you know, you can hunt something, which is great.
You got kind of shafted this year having the whole hernia surgery and.
Yeah, I just like to call it my injury, which I got in May, and then had to carry that with me through sheep season and elk season, and it definitely slowed me down in some ways, but it's nice. And then I had my surgery like right in the middle of the whitetail rut, and was laid up on the couch, couldn't do anything, so missed all that, which is whatever. I mean, it's the way it goes. And then I went and checked all my cameras, and you know, sure enough, I got some nice bucks on cam, but hopefully they'll be there next year for me. You know, the way it goes, but it's good to be.
I'm sure they won't stray too far.
That's the funniest part, though, man. Like the fact that you had an injury all season, and when we all went at the Alpine, we were all looking at you like, "How's this guy still going? Like, what is our injury that's slowing us down? Like, when you're busting trail, and I'm like, he's got a hernia. Isn't he supposed to be going slower? Like taking it easy?" Oh, I am taking it easy. Yeah, that's the problem. You were taking it easy.
That was so much fun, though.
Yeah, Hart has one speed, and it's go.
That was a lot of fun, though. Like, and that, like, where I took you guys, that was, you know, like, if you want to get into like sheep hunting up north, that was definitely like a good intro into what it's going to be like. Because it's a lot of hiking. Like I told you guys when, you know, we're at the bottom at the trailhead, I was like, we have to go to the top of this mountain, and there's only one way to get there, and that's up. And it was a lot of work, and you know, being cold and like 10 inches of fresh snow definitely didn't help. But man, that was fun.
You know what? It was a super, super cool adventure. Like I've been telling Ty even on the side, like it was a journey that I never thought I'd ever take in my hunting career. And then when we got to do it, it was just so much fun. And, you know, he's still a little sour that he didn't get to join us because it was 5 days notice on his time, apparently.
Oh, I'm usually game for anything.
But yeah, no, man, it was super cool. Like it was so much fun, and I can't wait to do it again this year, regardless of if a draw comes through or not. I'm going.
Oh yeah, we have to go back there, and I mean we planned quite a bit into it, and the way I look at it is like nothing went as planned that weekend, but it really couldn't have gone any better, you know. Just because of the success we had and the experience we had. I mean, I think everybody left that weekend feeling pretty good, and we accomplished something.
When these guys got back here to give me back my spotter, they were a banged up crew, man. They looked.
You know, that spotter worked really well for putting in my tent.
It's all right. I don't own that one anymore. Yeah. I'm a Swaro boy now, so.
That's why I didn't want to get it off you, Ty. I was like, no, man, I saw where this.
I've seen what Hart has done with it.
Yeah.
Have you hunted that area before, Hart? Before you went in there with the boys?
No, I actually I was gonna hunt a different area, and then I have some friends who will remain nameless. Gave me the 411 in the area who used to hunt it back in the day.
Yeah,
and
it's Jim Shockey.
You know, they're like Jim Shockey. They kind of showed me where to go. Like, this is all on Google Earth. This is where the trail is, and these are the areas to look for. And and stuff like that. And this is areas we've killed bucks in. And, you know, so I'm looking at it on Google Earth, like, no, this looks good. Like looking at the elevation changes, like, yeah, it's a good climb. It's a grind, but it looks like a sweet walking trail. And, you know, and then the night before we were going to go up there, the boys, we all went for dinner, and we're looking at it on Google Earth and showing the guys what to expect. And this is where we're going.
Yeah.
And, you know, everybody is like, oh, right on. Yep. Sweet. You know, and then the next day,
optimism was still there.
Next day we wake up to all this snow. The roads are a mess. And
That's
just
right,
like, oh man. I was like, well, we're still going. Like, that's big mountain hunting. Like, this is, you know, it's not always
one foot after the other, boys.
That's right. And we went up there, and no, it was great. It definitely worked the boys though. But no, it was great. And I can't wait to do it again. And you know, we only scratched the surface, and I just can't wait to dive right into that area.
It's gonna be super cool.
So what was the big takeaway from your sheep hunt? Like, what was the big lesson learned? Because I can think of a few from your story.
One of the big lessons learned, well, get an in reach.
You have one now.
which I have one now.
Yeah.
Don't lose your rangefinder. Going up with, and Foth and the boys learned this lesson too. Like, if you absolutely don't need it, don't take it.
Yeah.
Because everything you bring is on your back every step of the way, and ounces will add up to pounds. So
that's the truth.
Pack smart. And you know, that's a lot of that comes through experience and learning of what you can get away with and what you really don't need.
Yeah. What about that? What about that final approach? Would you have dumped your pack as far away?
Oh no. I should have just. It wasn't even much in it. I should have just kept it. You know
what's funny about that is I made that mistake chasing elk. I guess I don't know, whatever, a while ago, anyways, and I couldn't find my bag.
Oh,
I didn't
God.
find it for like a full day. Like the next day, I found my bag. It was real bad.
That's
it was bad. So this year, when we were doing that mule deer stalk, I just left my pack on. I was sliding down like these like I don't know, like these like scree hillsides on my bag, like, all the way to the bottom. It was rad. Of course, Ron's like surfing down them like a ninja, and I'm like Beverly Hills Ninja, like down the cliff, right? Yeah.
Chris Farley.
Yeah.
Keeping your gear on you is a good idea, because I've still made that mistake though. Like I dropped my bugle tube, or I did that one last year was elk hunting, and I put my bugle tube down because I was chasing some grouse around, and then I put all my stuff back on and went home, and then the next morning I'm like, where's my grunt tube? And I was like, oh, I left it up where I was chasing those grouse around. So, and I wasn't even hunting that area the next day, and I wasn't even worried about not hunting with my bugle tube because I rarely use it anyways. They never work, right?
Yeah.
And so the next, like 2 days later, I go up there and I find my grunt tube right where I left it.
Nice.
Yeah.
I found an arrow out of my wife's quiver a year later, and then I found a Nalgene that I left on a stump.
Was it still full of water?
Open. It was like completely full of water and frozen, but yeah, that was like a full year later too.
Really, a full year?
Just throw your stereo pen in there.
Travis left one of his grunt tubes out for a full year, and he ended up finding it the next year, and a coyote had used it as a chew toy. And it was toast.
Nice.
Yeah, it was chewed right up.
Well, I did, but I did leave your elk call because I left mine in the truck. I left your elk call up for it
this year. It was on the side of this old road. I looked for it this year and never found it.
Yeah, somebody's kids blowing into it.
Yeah, somebody else got it. It was like a wooden one too, though, so I'm sure it was probably pretty
super expensive. Classic.
Yeah.
Dude, I lose calls all the time. Like mouth diaphragms. Like if somebody finds a whole bunch of ant black mouth reeds in an area, that's where I hunt. Like, I'm just littering the woods with Phelps calls. It's great.
It's good to have lots. I don't know how many I pack with me, but probably at least 4 or 5 when I'm hunting.
In my Bino harness now, my Bino harness kit has really changed. It's like headlamp lighter, like wind check binos, and then always like half a dozen calls, like just mouth reeds, just the same one.
Yeah.
Because it's like the worst when you're like in the thick of things and you go to pop it in and it's like, okay, that's gone.
Yeah, there it goes.
That doesn't sound very good if I do it without a reed.
I usually just keep mine in for the entire day, but it gets pretty soggy and I chew on mine, so they get pretty roughed up.
Yeah, my mouth gets too raw doing that.
Yeah. But it's nice because I just like having it when I'm walking, especially because if you jump something, I'm just like right away just start chirping at it, just, instead of like if you jump in, they're like, oh, I got to put my call in. By then that thing's gone.
I mean, that's a trick that you taught me. Me and Chad called in that 5x6 on September 3rd this year.
Okay.
September 3rd is like a magic number, I guess.
Yeah, we had some.
Because the year before...
we had an encounter.
Yeah, the year before we had some luck. And then this year I had that bull come in hot and heavy. And he... So I messed that one up. It took me forever to count him. And then once I decided that I was going to shoot him, I chirped at him to turn him, and then I drew my bow. I should have drawn my bow and then chirped.
Hindsight.
So like Yeah, for sure. But he peeled off when he saw a fat dude drawing his bow, right? So I just started chirping at him, and sure enough, he stopped like 60, maybe 70 yards out. Like, no shot. I
Yeah.
could just see like the top half of his rack. But he just like stood there and was like, where them ladies at, yo?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
he just hung out forever. He just wouldn't peel out, and like we just couldn't get him to come back.
Yeah,
He's
he
like,
already
"Nah,
knows
I just
something.
saw a fat guy with a yeah, he's like, I just saw a dude drawing a bow, but there is chicks somewhere nearby, and I'm into that. So
Well,
what's up?
we had that.
Come
What was
to
that?
me,
20
right?
was that 2019 again? That you and I had that. We called in that Spike Fork Bowl.
The
And,
spike.
man.
Yes,
we
that was in the
both
rain, too.
chirped at him at the same time, and his head damn near broke. He spun around so hard. Remember that? Like, and he just stood there
Yeah,
for like 15,
that
20
was-
minutes at about 40 yards, just staring at us.
That was cool. And we actually we jumped that bull too, because we were working our way through some pretty thick timber and just chirping. And again, it was, only a few days into hunting season. And I don't know if I'm always just rusty and forget that, you can just stumble upon elk so quickly. And I had my guard down, and then I just look and I see a bull like kind of shuffling through the trees because he's already seen us. And then we call it to him, and he's looking at us, and we had a staring contest for probably 5 minutes. And then we, started playing around with him.
What about that bull last year that damn near ran me over twice?
What bull was that?
Like, remember, I was kind of just like blindly chirping as I was cruising through the woods, and I came into these pines on this game trail, like a game trail that I know that they use, and I was just chirping along. I had the wind good. I turned this corner only to see like a big bull. I never actually ended up counting him. Like, do a full 180 spin, like maybe 12 yards from me, and just piece it the opposite direction. Like,
Yeah.
okay, that was close. Like, and then I finished the rest of my day hunting, bail out, and I'm like chirping on my way down to the road. Then he ran across the road.
Oh,
in front
yeah. I
of me.
remember you telling me about that. That was at the end of the day.
It was just like both times caught me completely off guard. I was looking like Elmer
Yeah,
Fudd.
man. And that happens so many times. Like, they can be right there and you don't even know it. And
they're sneaky.
And so like that, and first week of the season, I always just kind of have to like shake the rust off, get back into it. But usually by like the third week, you're just kind of like ready for it, And
do you hit September 1 to September 9 hard?
it depends on my work schedule. If I'm off, yes, but I don't really take time off in that time of the year. I'll focus more near the end of the month because that's when I've had most of my success. But I mean, like,
Yeah,
I
that
would
makes a lot of
love
sense.
an arrow and elk, though. I never have, and arrowing a bull would be pretty sweet, But it's tough. It can be done, but it would be tough.
I know that bull that I had a shot at with my bow last year was like, it was like one of those shots that afterwards I'm like, oh, I should have shot him. Then I called you right after, and you're like, why'd you shoot him?
I'm sure that didn't make you feel any better.
I wasn't sure. No, you're like right where the color changes on their chest, right there. Put your pin right there. I'm like,
Too little,
yeah,
too late. Yeah,
he's gone.
Sure. A tough shot with a bow, though. But I mean, if you had put an arrow in there, man, he probably would have been like 15 yards piled up.
I think it was one of those things where I didn't want to. I didn't want to put an arrow in something that I wasn't sure.
You
if it
know
would
what?
do the job, And I've never taken that shot. I've never taken that shot on anything. I've only ever shot.
And that's 100% right.
That's
Yeah,
cool.
That you couldn't be more right about that, Ty, because you've had the heartbreak before. You've experienced it most people haven't.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they haven't experienced that, and then people would be, well, what's the big deal?
Yeah.
It's a huge deal. It's a huge upset.
Yep.
And, you lose sleep over it. For a long time.
And you made the. I think you made the right call. So.
Hart, are we allowed to talk about how I shot an elk in 2019 and then it showed up on camera in 2020?
You can if you want. It's your elk.
I mean, I guess so, but it's not my camera. Is the thing?
We don't know
we
whose
got the other
camera it
photo.
was.
I think you do, right?
Maybe. But that,
I have to say that made me feel a
that's
little
closure,
bit
right?
better because I was like, why can't we find this thing? Do you remember how much time we put in
you
looking for
spent
that
the rest
bull?
of your season looking for it. I know, and just from the story you told me, like how you hit it twice and the blood and how far it went, and then to find out that it actually lived, like that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember what the exact yardage was. It was like sub 30 yards with a 7mm rem
Yeah,
mag.
super close.
And Chad watched the impact too is the other thing. He's like, oh, you hit it perfect. And I mean, the only thing he can think, I know, right? And he's like, the only thing that he can think is that the bullet didn't make it through him. And then I think maybe the second shot went through the hump. Because, like,
could have.
That's why I said earlier.
You didn't hit lung, though, right?
No.
If you'd have hit even one lung, it wouldn't have survived.
Yeah, not that long, anyways. Not into March the following year.
No.
But that's why earlier when you were saying, "Oh yeah, my dad shot this elk and the elk went down and he shot it again," like that's the exact scenario that happened, right? That elk hit the dirt. That elk hit the dirt right there, and I was like, "Get moving," and he's starting to pick his head back up, and I'm just like, "Oh, I better pump this thing again." And Chad's looking at me. Chad's looking at me like, "Oh, don't worry about it. He's dead." So.
No, and you got a second shot into him quick too.
Yeah,
which is good. Like it's hard to keep your composure when that's all going down.
I don't really get that like shaky or weird or anything in those scenarios. I just like I'm just so like involved in what's going on when that stuff goes down, you know? Like I feel like I work so hard for my opportunities that I'm like unwilling to let them blow, you know?
Well, that's good.
Yeah, that's like, I'll have to, I really want to get Ron on here and talk to him about my mule deer from last year because it was hilarious because it was completely out of my comfort zone. And he's like, I shot it with a rifle and I had my rifle on top of the frame of my pack and they're like a little tippy, right? And he's like, it's 204 yards, which is like nothing to most guys listening to this podcast, right? But I don't really shoot rifles, like, not very often. So 200 yards for me is like, that's sort of the end of my range unless I'm really working at it, you know? And he's like, "Oh, okay, are you good?" I'm like, yeah, I'm good. He's like, "Are you comfortable?" I'm like, "No, I'm not comfortable." He's like, "Get comfortable." I'm like, "How am I going to get comfortable?" He's like, "I don't know, just shoot that thing, man. Like, what are you doing? Let's go. Pull the trigger."
What's the holdup?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a guy that rings the gong out to 1,000 yards, no problem, right? But
yeah, so 200 yards is a chip shot for him.
Oh, he's looking at me like, "What are you doing?" That's like Chad too. I mean, you go to the range with Chad, and he just makes you feel inadequate with a gun. So,
yeah, some guys are like that.
Yeah, no doubt.
I'm not one of those guys.
Yeah, no, I'm not either. So
yeah, you don't have to be like that.
Like
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, we're coming up on like an hour and 20 here.
Holy.
So, maybe we'll wrap this up, and you two boys can do this again soon on your own.
Sounds good.
You don't
Thanks,
need me,
man.
right?
Sure, we don't. Whatever.
Thanks for listening to the Wilderness Locals podcast. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe to our channel and give us a follow on Instagram @Wilderness Locals.